Am I the a-hole for telling my mother who survived cancer that she's a failure as a parent when she tried to take credit for my accomplishments? My mother has always had issues, and as a parent she was pretty detached mentally. My parents didn't get married, and I steadily ended up living with my dad full-time. And because she wasn't in my life very much, I hardly ever even referred to my mother as mom. A few years ago, she was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and had to have mastectomy. She recovered well, but ever since she was given the bill of clean health, she has started trying to act like a parent who did everything for me my entire life. And she goes out of her way to talk about such things in public, and people were eating it up. Last week, I met up with my mother and several of her friends for lunch because I'd recently landed a small promotion at my job, and my mother was insistent on celebrating. Well, during said lunch, she of course talked about how proud of me she was, and boasting about her boy to her friends, and how she did so much to make sure I was brought up right. I was internally angry because she was lying through her teeth, but I didn't plan on saying anything. But then she started crap-talking my dad, and the things she was saying were outright lies that painted my dad as the absent and neglectful parent. She took credit for several of the major milestones in my life that she didn't even show up for. I ended up getting angry and pointed out she wasn't there for any of those things. She froze and then laughed it off, then tried to say that I was always a jokester. I ended up saying something like, "How would you know whether or not I'm a jokester? You were barely around when I was a kid. You didn't even buy clothes for me to wear. My dad was the one who was really there for me, and I won't let you insult his good name like this to make yourself look good." She ended up crying with her face in her hands, and her friends ganged up on me. They started demanding I apologize, but I refused and said that just because she survived cancer, it doesn't let her rewrite her own history. She was almost never there for me as a kid. She didn't even attend my high school graduation, let alone even remember what year I graduated. She tried to say of course she remembered, but guessed wrong, it was off by 2 years. I called her a liar and a failure as a parent, and said not to contact me again until she's willing to admit the truth, and apologize to me and my dad. I then left cash for my part of the bill with the waiter and walked out. My mother's friends were all yelling at me, and I could hear her crying all the way from the street. My maternal grandmother messaged me on Facebook to chew me out, but I said that I wasn't gonna let my mother rewrite history, and she knows full well what really went on. My grandmother said I could have waited to call her out in private, because now many of my mother's friends are questioning her. I said I really didn't care anymore, and stopped messaging. But now that I've had time to cool off, I'm wondering if I took things too far. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I'm so sorry you've been put in this situation, but you're correct. You don't have to uphold your mother's lies, and you're allowed to tell her how you feel. I think it may be time to limit contact with her though for your own sanity. Exactly. Not the a-hole OP. She has created her own version of history that paints her as the hero and your father as the villain, and she is spreading this lie to make herself feel better. I understand her need to reconnect with you after her brush with cancer. You made a decision to let her back into your life when not many people would have done that after the neglect they faced from that parent. But that doesn't give her carte blanche to distort the truth. She maligned your father in company, so you were well within your rights to call her out on her lies. Don't feel bad about it. In a situation like this, only you can truly know right. But one thing I get. You can sit there listening to the lies and embellishments until she badmouthed your dad who clearly was there. So I'd say not the a-hole. Sorry bro, sad situation. It is sad all around, but you stood up for your dad, which was right. I'm sure your mom has regrets, but is expressing that in all the wrong ways instead of coming to terms with her own behavior. Not the a-hole at all. It's amazing how after a serious medical issue, parents like to rewrite history. The thing is, you tried to sit and let her do it, because you probably didn't want to make a scene. But she just had to go and trash talk your dad. Sounds like she wanted to, "Oh no, your life has been so hard," points. Make it out like she had a hard time raising you by herself, and then after all that and you have been successful, she got cancer. She owes you a massive apology for being absent for most of your life and for the fact that she wanted to show you off as a trophy of her accomplishments after her cancer made her realize she was an awful mother. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to stop projecting her insecurities on other women? My sister and her husband are going through very public marital issues. To give you the condensed version, basically, my brother-in-law was caught cheating on my sister by my wife during an event she happened to be working at. She's a bartender. My wife immediately told my sister, in private, without telling my brother-in-law that she knew, and my sister proceeded to get very angry with my wife, accusing her of ruining her marriage. This culminated in my sister breaking down and screaming at my wife during a family dinner, calling her a cheap woman who likes to break up marriages and a person with no hobbies. My sister's very public rant about my wife led to my brother-in-law admitting, in front of my family members, that he cheated. This, of course, led to more drama. This all happened a few months ago, and as far as I can tell, my sister and her husband are not going to split up. After this whole situation, I decided to distance myself from my family for a little bit. I thought that my sister needed time to process everything, and I didn't think it was fair to my wife to subject her to my sister's rage. I sent a long text message essentially telling her that I wanted her to sincerely apologize to my wife. My sister apologized, and I thought that it would be the end of that. Then my dad invited my wife and I to celebrate his birthday at his place. I knew that everyone would be there, including my sister and her husband, so I was a bit hesitant to go, but my wife assured me that everything would be alright. To start, everything was going well. My sister practically avoided us, which I didn't mind, and my brother-in-law was glued to her side the entire time, so we didn't really face any drama. Everyone was cordial towards one another, and no one mentioned my brother-in-law's infidelity. At one point, I think my wife asked my brother-in-law to move over so that she could sit down. She's currently on crutches. And when my brother-in-law got her a chair and helped her sit down, my sister got extremely mad at my wife for being too friendly with her man. Her exact words. My wife was confused and explained that she just wanted a seat. But my sister wasn't having any of it. She started full-on yelling at my wife for doing what she always does and ruining other people's relationships. My sister has a loud voice, so literally everyone stopped and looked at her and my wife. My wife looked pretty embarrassed and just muttered a sorry. I'd even wanted to go stand up, but I butted in and told my sister to stop yelling at my wife and to stop acting extremely insecure in front of other women and go for counseling or something. For whatever reason, my sister ran out the room crying after that, and my wife and I left soon after. My brother-in-law texted an apology on behalf of my sister, but told me that I was a little rude and that I should apologize. My wife thinks that I may have been too harsh. My entire family is split, some saying that I was too mean to her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Text your brother-in-law back and suggest that if he stops sleeping around, that might also make things better. This brother-in-law has no right to complain. Sure, but brother-in-law isn't really the problem here. Of course, he's an a-hole, but the best case scenario is that this dumpster fire marriage ends, I'm guessing. Some couples have the emotional maturity and honesty to move past an infidelity, but this one clearly doesn't. So, of the two poorly behaved people in this story, brother-in-law and sister, brother-in-law and his infidelity will one day, God willing, not be OP's problem. I'd honestly ignore him. But his sister and her delusions, insecurity, misogyny, whatever you call it, that will be part of his family dynamic regardless, and that's more important to address. After all, she's not gonna call it on her marriage and be able to work towards being less insane until she's ready to put the blame where it belongs. Your sister is absolutely projecting. Keep standing up for your wife since your sister won't let her. Gonna slip a crutches joke in. Absolutely not stay home. Keep the crutches jokes coming. I love leaving some for my wife. Lol. Not stay home. Your sister is killing the messenger and taking out the anger she should be feeling towards her husband on your wife. She's completely in the wrong. Your sister needs some counseling to help her redirect and refocus the resentment and embarrassment she's feeling and to learn how to move past it. So true. I have no doubt if Opie's wife hadn't told about the cheating and it was discovered that she knew, there would still be fireworks because she kept silent. There was no way to win when dealing with crazy. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting mad over what my daughter chose after she humiliated me and uninvited me from her engagement dinner party? My daughter, 30 female, is a successful engineer. She cut contact with me the minute she turned 18 and only began talking 2 years ago. This has obviously hurt me a lot and made a lot of my family members disappointed in her. Nowadays, whenever I have to talk to her, I have to tiptoe around her and not comment on her dresses or makeup or career or lifestyle. Otherwise, she simply reminds me that she can and will stop talking to me, that the only reason why it started being her father's death. I only commented on those things during her teens because she had a lot of potential, and I didn't want it to go waste. It wasn't harsh at all like she claims. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, 31 male of 8 years, and decided to throw a dinner party to her near and dear ones at their own house. She let me invite a couple of my relations. She told me about 5 to 6 people only, but since I've got a lot of people I'd like to share this milestone with, I did go a little overboard in inviting 10 to 13. This clearly was an issue apparently, because the restaurant in their apartment and the poolside allow only 18 to 20 people max at such events, and my relatives were a majority of them, leaving no room for their friends or boyfriend's family. She sat down and made me uninvite everyone instead of giving a simple excuse as to why they couldn't come, and this experience was very humiliating for me. I told her that she was being rude, and she told me that she'd specified how many people from my side were allowed, and that she was very generous that she even let such people to share something joyous with her. After this, she told me not to come to the party and told me to stop ignoring her instructions. I feel disrespected that someone younger made me lose face. It acted as if I didn't know how all these places worked. They would have accommodated worst case. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. You're the a-hole. She stopped talking to you for a reason. To be completely honest, you sound narcissistic. The whole post is about how she's disrespecting you, but it's totally obvious that you are disrespecting her. She gave you a set number of people, and you just didn't follow that. Then told her she was rude because you had to tell your friends they couldn't come. If you invited a number of people she told you to, you wouldn't have had to do that. You shot yourself in the foot and are acting like it was your daughter that did it. You have to take a look at yourself and grow up. OP, you sound like an overbearing mama. It doesn't matter how much potential you think your daughter has. This doesn't mean you are allowed to judge her looks. Judging someone else's looks is not okay. And moreover, we have to love our children because how they are and give them support and love. Nothing else. You're the a-hole. I hope you can see past your narcissistic view that everything you do is good and practice self-reflection. And also, don't count on being invited again. OP is a freaking narcissist. Plain and simple. OP, this event was for your daughter to celebrate her marriage. Yet you found a way to make it about yourself and your feelings. Your daughter set a boundary. She was generous to let you invite 5 to 6 people in my opinion, and you overstepped it. She disinvited you. Basically, you messed around and found out. She isn't rude for having boundaries. It's her day. This isn't about you. Your daughter cut contact with you for a reason. Children don't abandon their parents until they've reached their breaking point. You must have been overbearing for her to decide to go no contact completely once she reached adulthood. You're the a-hole, and a massive one at that. The fact that you threw a tantrum about being disrespected by someone younger shows that you aren't remorseful about what you've done. You're just in need of someone to validate your crappy behavior. I agree with absolutely everything you've said, except the term overbearing. I'm 51 and my mom wants me to leave her house early because she doesn't like me driving at night. That's overbearing in my opinion. OP criticizing her daughter's dress, makeup, career, or lifestyle while she was in vulnerable teenage years, and then completely disregarding her daughter's rules for her party is downright narcissistic, and you factually stated. OP is a major a-hole and it's no wonder why her daughter went no contact. Last story. Am I the a-hole for shredding my daughter's coloring book? I have 3 daughters. Alyssa, 18, Tessa, 16, and Jenna, 14. Alyssa and I have a great relationship. We rarely argue. She drives her sisters around. She works almost full-time while in school. The only problem is she can be unreliable. If you ask her to get groceries and be home by 5, she'll call you at 6:30 and ask what you wanted her to do. And she doesn't do housework without being reminded 5 times. She has ADHD though, so that explains it. Jenna loves to argue. She argues with my husband a few times a week. She's a pretty good kid otherwise. She's a straight-A student. She played soccer and is playing softball, and she helps around the house more than both of her sisters combined. Tessa is complicated. When she applies herself, she gets straight A's extremely easy. The problem is, she never does her homework, so she usually has B's and C's. She and I have similar hobbies, and both my husband and I love talking to her when she's in a good mood. We don't fight often, but when we do, it's very dramatic. She's been insisting that she has ADHD or some other problem since she was around 11 because she can't focus. But my husband and I think she's just trying to get shorter assignments and extra time like Alyssa. We got into an argument the other day because she has IBD and gets infusions every 6 weeks. She is very strict about never pushing it back for any reason. After we tried to push it back once because we were going to be in another state, and she got sick for 6 weeks and 3 days. It was 2 years ago and she's healthier now, but she still refuses to push it back. Her next infusion is scheduled for April 1, but we're going to be on a vacation from March 30 to April 4, so I scheduled her infusion for March 8. Her doctor approved it, but she started yelling at me about how last time I pushed her infusion back, she got sick and she isn't going to risk her health for my vacation. It became a very long and drawn-out argument. When I picked her up from school, she put her headphones on so she wouldn't have to talk to me. Then she locked herself in her room. She had borrowed my laptop, so I looked in her backpack to see if she still had it. While I was looking, I saw passes from the school therapist. Tessa knows I don't want her talking to those therapists because those people will find any reason to call CPS. Tess admitted that she'd been seeing the therapist once a week for 2 years. She wouldn't look up from her coloring book, so I took it. And she started crying and asked me to give it back because her therapist gave it to her for when she was having a bad day. I ended up shredding it, and she hasn't left her room except for school and hasn't spoken since. So I wanted to know if I was the a-hole. You're the a-hole. You neglected your kid. You don't want her to seek help. You are aware her seeking help might get you in trouble. You didn't ask her while making a decision on her health. She is overreacting because she had a bad experience. It is very clear. You ruined a book that was probably calming her. You don't think ADHD or whatever is an issue. With this consistency, you might not have a future relationship with your daughters. I can't imagine ever wanting to have a relationship with someone who intentionally destroyed something artistic I was working on. That's like taking a piece of someone's soul and lighting it on fire. My dad called bullet journaling a waste of time when I was monitoring my medication, symptoms, and overall health from 3 different autoimmune disorders. Haven't been able to pick it up over a year later, and I'm 24. I hate this type of parent.